how can the public and private and international finance collaborate together to actually ensure sustainable national food systems. So that's the guiding discussion from today. And I would like to briefly introduce the three speakers. That is Sander van Kooten from the European Investment Bank, Getachew Mekonnen from the Ministry of Agriculture in Ethiopia, and Eric Margaria from the Rabo Foundation, who is based in Kenya. I would like to invite them for their presentations, and also ask them to briefly elaborate a little bit more on their own introduction of themselves. We have per presentation around 7 minutes, so the presentations will be short. And after each presentation, we will give the floor to the audience just to pose a few questions for which we have only 5 minutes. So we will have the presentation of Sander and then 5 minutes for questions and answer, and then we go to the next presentation. If there are many more questions, please put, and you are not allowed to ask, please put your questions in the chat. We will see how to follow up on that. So may I ask the first presentation of Sander to show us, to start.
Hello, everyone. Nice to meet you all, even though virtually. Let me just quickly start up my slideshow, and I think you should be able to see the first slide. So in terms of myself, Sander van Kooten, I'm a senior loan officer at the European Investment Bank, and I've been working here for the last 11 years, although I initially started my career at ING Bank, so I've been in the financial sector for the last 20 years. In terms of financing the sustainable and national food systems, perhaps first a word about the European Investment Bank itself, because it's important for the background of our chat today. So the EIB, the European Investment Bank, is the bank of the European Union. We are owned by the 27 member states of the EU, but inside the EU we work under their mandate, but outside the EU we work under the mandate of the European Commission. And that you'll see later on that is quite important. We are one of the world's largest multilateral lenders, and we are a leading provider of climate finance, which comes back into our sustainability discussion later on. So at a glance, you can see that the EIB is quite large. We have about 4,200 of staff with 60 offices around the world, and we do on a yearly basis about 70 to 80 billion of new loans, of which 10% in outside the European Union. In terms of the EIB's priorities, we work off of the SDGs to lead us in terms of priorities. One of them, of course, is Zero Hunger, SDG number 2, which is a leading sort of SDG in terms of what we do in the bioeconomy sector. If you look at the EIB's sort of total lending in the agricultural sector, you can see that in 2024, and apologies that 2025 figures are not yet available, but in terms of 2024, you can see that about 6 billion of loans have been provided, of which 2.2 billion is direct lending and 3.9 billion is indirect lending. We'll go into that in a little bit. But in total, about 6.1 billion, of which 20% outside the EU, so about 1.2 billion. What's also interesting to notice is that 72% of those loans are classified as having, a significant climate action and environmental sustainability component. In terms of the next slide, how do we do private sector supporting lending? So in terms of loans, we provide direct loans and grants to the public sector, which is, you can see here on the right. I don't know if you can see my cursor, but towards the right, the gray box, you can see the big sort of column, and you can see that we do provide direct loans, intermediated loans, and guaranteed loans. For the private sector itself, we can either work with large corporates directly, but as soon as it becomes a bit smaller, it verges towards intermediation. And let me show you on the next slide what that effectively means. So we often, as EIB, provide loans to what we call the promoter, the entity which promotes or is the leader in terms of the implementation of a project. And you can see that it can either be done via a commercial bank, so that we can collaborate either together with a commercial bank, so we both provide a loan. A commercial bank can guarantee us, or it can be another entity. Quite often, this is done, for instance, by governments or national promotional banks, which have a specific incentive to provide a guarantee, particularly because the EIB can provide cheaper funding than the majority of the commercial banks. Or we act via a commercial bank, and that's what we call the indirect lending, which you saw in the previous slide, which is that because the EIB is a macroeconomic player, we provide larger facilities, and then commercial banks have more direct relationships with their clients, and hence they intermediate to provide loans and grants to smaller to SMEs in the agriculture sector. Now, I can also diverge a little bit on project finance, but I think the time is too short for that. So let me just tell you that in terms of the EIB, the way that we operate in terms of the food systems financing is that we work off of the EU priorities, particularly outside Europe. That's very important because the EU, we work together on the basis of their priorities. That's why we are also called the EU bank. So how does that work? In most of the countries that we work in, the local European delegation has agreements together with the government in terms of where to focus financial assistance and financial collaboration. Now, the way that this is done is normally done on a 7-year basis. So there's a particular document that the EU delegations then prepare. It's called the MIP, Multi-Annual Indicative Program, and on that basis, the local government and the EU delegation to that particular country then agree for a period of about 7 years on which priorities to focus. You may have heard about the Global Gateway strategy. The Global Gateway strategy is the overall sort of strategy that the European Union has to address a variety of priorities which are important for the European Union, and agriculture and food systems for sure are a significant part of that. It's a part of the Green Deal, and this derives also from sort of the EU priorities for itself. So within the EU's sort of internal policies, for instance, the Common Agricultural Policy, and the new vision for agriculture and food, which was set up in 2025. You see that the EU is trying to focus on things like viable farm income, environmental and climate action, but also development of rural areas and ensuring that the rural development has sufficient funding. In light of that, Miss Agnes's introductory statements, you can also see, where the EU and national sort of countries are grappling with more or less the same things, and often, it depends a little bit on how you implement that in terms of, the national strategy vis-a-vis an EU strategy, on how that sort of materializes. And for the outside European sort of sector, that's exactly the same thing. So outside Europe, we're focusing a lot on financial rural development, particularly in light of this Green Deal. Sustainable development is part of that. We do a lot in terms of the food and agribusiness. A recent deal that we did in Ethiopia focuses, for instance, on rural and rural smallholder farmers, to develop, for instance, developing smart agricultural sort of infrastructure, but also sustainable development for the agricultural sector. So I think I'll leave it at that for now. I did want to show you, this is for the presentation and this can later be shared, so I won't diverge too much into this, but I did want to show you some examples of ongoing projects. You can see here, for instance, the recent project that we did in Ethiopia together with IFAD. And I also have to say that we work together here with the World Food Programme and, for instance, the FAO Investment Center. These are all partners that we work with a lot in the agricultural sector. And you can see from the next slide again, with a commercial bank, that again we have worked very, very well together with the FAO Investment Center. And for the last one that we present here, again, excellent collaboration with the FAO Investment Center. So this is a little bit the end of my presentation. I wanted to also sort of give you the fact that in terms of our work together with other partners, the EIB always tends to work together with either a commercial bank, or together with a government, or together with the European Union, or a combination of all of these. Not only that, we do like also to work with the Rome-based agencies, which are a driving force in the whole sort of financing and development of the agricultural sectors worldwide. And again, we are open to work with any partner that comes our way. So if there's any interest from people within the audience today, feel free to reach out. With that, thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much, Sander. And it's good to see how you explained how you already collaborate with the public and private sector in the different countries. I want to give the floor to 2 minutes, 3 minutes to somebody who has a specific question to Sander. Please raise your hand. I don't see any hands. Yes, Karin? Can you unmute yourself and pose the question?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, Sander. Thank you so much for this presentation. And I'm actually the perfect example of food and finance, because I'm a banker by profession. And I left my job recently, and I have started working on a beverage company, which is a food-based beverage company, which is a sustainable crop, which comes from India. So how can EIB have its collaborations and funding in India? Do you have any connections and any portfolios in India as well, or how is it?
So thank you very much for the question. Yes, we do work in India. We fund actually several projects in India at the moment. Most of them are larger infrastructural projects, but we also do have credit lines in the private sector. Now, I saw out of my eyes, I saw a question pop up in terms of what's EIB's average loan size. And I think that's a very important question, because in essence, the EIB is very much like the World Bank. We do larger loans. So we start for the private sector more or less at about 20 million and going up. So working on a small, and again, I don't know exactly the size of your company or the place where you work, but in order to absorb a 20 million loan, it means that you need to have at least a balance sheet which is more or less 5 to 10 times that size. Which is why when you saw at the the slide where I presented the collaboration with banks, quite often an intermediated facility where we as EIB lend to a local bank, and that local bank, then we request that local bank to pass on the cheaper pricing to the clients. That is a better option, because we can't cover our costs if we provide a loan facility of 500,000. So we need to have a larger size in order to get to cover those costs, and that's why we work together via intermediation.
Sorry, can I go to the next question? We have very limited time. I just want to ask Kinsley or Moni to pose your question, and then after that we go to the next presenter, which is somebody from the government of Ethiopia, and who is also knows about the RUFE program in Ethiopia, I'm sure. But can you, Eric?
Yeah. Am I audible? Yeah.
Sorry, Kinsley.
Yeah. Am I audible? Can you hear me?
Yes, very well.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. I work with a commercial bank in Nigeria, specifically Wema Bank PLC. So my question is on the EIB loan that can be lent to these individuals through the bank. Is there a way you work? I don't know if you've done something like that across maybe in Nigeria, where you give or you collaborate with a Nigerian bank to lend to these individuals to kind of push and sustain this food system in Africa.
So a very good question. I focus myself more on East Africa, but I do know that in Nigeria we have a very active and very good collaboration with the government. So I could imagine that we have similar sort of agreements in place. Let me quickly check our systems. I can come back to you later in the chat to see whether I find a commercial bank,
Okay.
whether whom we've worked. Thank you.
Yeah, and if you have, I see more people have raised their hands. I think if it's about the question to ask if EIB is active in your country, you can also find it through Sander on the specific website of EIB. I'm sure, but if there is, I would like to continue with the next speaker.